And away we go. Hello, welcome everybody to the College Football Families Network. Big Freakin' Friday, right, Mo? And I can't quite say that without tripping over my tongue. But Big Freakin' Friday is definitely something that we want everybody to be here for. We'll welcome you with us tonight. I hope everybody has some fun. We're going to do this for a little bit of time, and hopefully we can have some fun and enjoy each other's company at the same time. First off, I want to introduce everybody that's on our panel tonight. The Wild Ute, Moen After Dark, and Immaculate View, who's here. He just had to step away from his desk for a minute. So I want to make sure everybody knows where they can find us. Please follow us on Twitter. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube. And then last but not least, turn on your notifications. And then really quick, before we get going, let's also show you how you can become a member of the Mafia family.
Want to become a member of the College Football Mafia family? Simply select the Join button from our homepage. There are several options with their own unique benefits to choose from. You can also set yourself to auto-accept gifted membership by selecting the gift settings options as shown.
All right, that's awesome. We appreciate Moen for putting that video together. Hopefully you can take advantage of that. We do have a preference on how we take comments. Our Big Freakin' Friday show is mostly comments. We do talk about the news items. We'll tee them up, but then we want to hear back from you. So you're invited to leave your comments and questions in the comment section. You can also consider becoming a member of the Mafia family, and those comments are highlighted to me, and they naturally have precedence over everybody else around them. And then last but not least is super chats. We read every super chat. They always are read during the show, and that makes sure that you, whatever is on top of your mind, you can get it on the show, and we can address the question or comment directly. All right, before we get going, let's just turn over a little bit of time here at the top. Wild Ute, what's on your mind? What are you thinking about this week going into this weekend?
I'm thinking about Notre Dame. I'm thinking about how the lawsuit that's hit Notre Dame is going to be a game changer, and I don't think that you can minimize that either. And so, when we're talking about Notre Dame going to a conference, perhaps I think it's becoming more real, and we're starting to see it. So Notre Dame's on my mind, and to parlay into that too, Notre Dame to the Big Ten video will be coming out for all members tomorrow. So right in time, y'all. Right in freaking time for you. So watch Notre Dame. Watch what happens with Notre Dame over the next year, 2, 3 years. But it seems like things are slipping for their independence.
Boy, oh boy, we've been teasing that video for months. So everybody make sure you consider becoming a member of the Mafia family. Those videos are in our lockdown member section. There we have a couple options for you to join as a member. And then you have access to all the videos that we produced in the past several months, and then anything we have going forward for sure. All right, Moen, you look loaded for bear. Please tell us what you're dressed as, okay? And besides the tie-dye, what else is going on with you tonight?
I stopped at the liquor store and got a bottle of bourbon.
That? Oh, yeah.
This is Jefferson Reserve, very old, straight bourbon whiskey, very small batch. And I haven't tried it yet. I poured a little glass here. This is for everybody, Georgia Tech.
Georgia Tech.
TGIF. Tomorrow's 420. So until then.
It's March 420. I see what's going on there.
So for everybody who wants to know why we're saying Georgia Tech and what happens when we do say that, it's a drinking game we have here on the show, specifically set aside for Big Freakin' Fridays, but I think it's bled over to every one of our shows in one way or another. So we invite you, if you're over 21, go ahead and participate. If you do participate and you drink a bit, please don't drive. We don't want anybody going out and hurt anybody. But it is supposed to be a little way for everybody to let their hair down and enjoy the show. Immaculate, when he gets back, I'll let him give what's his top of mind going on into this weekend. He's currently engaged at home and will be hopefully right back with us pretty soon, and we hope so. Toy, I don't know if I want to tell you what. Let's just start off with the Florida State ACC lawsuit. Okay, let me bring that up. There was a I don't know if it was a explanatory video or article more than it was just, hey, this is the bare bones about what's being their options to handle the court cases in both Leon County and Mecklenburg County. That would be North Carolina and Florida. And this article by Matt Baker from the Tampa Bay Times, let me take that link so everybody has access to it, explains the 4 things that can happen. It's pretty common. Not common, but it's pretty simple. There's no indictments or anything in these steps. But we'll quickly run through those, and hopefully we can generate some comments and questions to go with that. Before I dive into these, let's do some shout outs. First one I want to say is Joaquin Morales, first one in the house. Let me make this small again. Joaquin Morales says, hey, Becky, Sergeant Pickles, College Football Mafia family, don't forget to smash that like button. Let's go. I agree with that 100%. Timothy Green next says, it's Georgia Tech night, folks. Let's go. There we go. Hey, there's Immaculate. He's back. Let's see. Buckshot Kid says, oh, hey, at the College Football Mafia. Good to have you here, Buckshot Kid.
What's going on?
Hard 91 says, too many rumors, but excellent fodder for the show. Hail all, and Mafia, Georgia Tech, Georgia Tech. Let's get to Daniel Gygax, who says, how do I get FedEx to sponsor me for an NIL deal?
No kidding.
That was something that came out today, too. If we have time, we'll talk about that for sure.
Mhm.
He's asking for a friend, so nobody ascribe for different reasons that he wants to do it. He's asking for a friend.
Sure.
Ryan Willie says, hi, everyone. By the way, everybody who's here early, these are all members, and we salute all the members that have been with us for a really long time. And having their comments be here as we begin shows is really, really cool. It makes us feel well. Feel good. Rock Chalk 94 says, hey, guys, learned one thing today. Cincy fans can bite. Anybody, what's he talking about there? Did anybody see anything about Cincinnati today, or is that just him?
I'm guessing he might have had some interesting interactions on Twitter.
Cincinnati fans they're live. I mean, all
they'll come
last
at
year, yeah, they will definitely do that. Mr. Monkey says his monkey is in. That's what he's saying there. Sergeant Pickle says, let's go. Mr. Monkey says, follows up by saying he's multitasking. Glenn Lumen, all the way from the Philippines. Good morning, Glenn. Get down here a little bit farther. We did Timothy Green. We did Sergeant Pickles. We did Ryan Willie. And I think that, we got a few more just come here at the end. Don in Kansas says, hello, everyone. Good to have you here, Don. And Illini Ted will be the last one in the gate as we start the show. He says, I feel like we need some license and peppermints tonight. Incense, sorry.
Okay,
incense and peppermint.
That's right.
Very good. Okay. If that's what you
Moan,
want.
this outfit fits you really well. Like, look at Moan. Look how good he looks in this attire.
Standing in the forest.
Danny McNerney, another member, says, hey, y'all, go Bucks.
Go Bucks.
And Bob Swinger says, good evening, everyone. These are all members. How cool is that, guys? And last, we'll end with Jan Hulk saying, hey, all the way from Slovenia. We're glad you're here, Jan. Thank you very much for showing up.
Welcome in.
That's all right. Okay. The one person we didn't ask what his top of mind is today is Immaculate. Immaculate, kind of tell everybody how your week went and kind of what's in your mind as we start this show tonight.
Whew. Well, I mean, it was kind of a frantic week, but at the same time, we didn't really have a whole lot of information. I am kind of interested to look into this article and now that the head lawyer for the House case is now starting to come out and do his, shall you say, media runs. That's going to get very interesting. He's the head lawyer for that. And 2 other cases as well, which, like, talk about having your hands full. In terms of the ACC case, now all of a sudden we have a race, right, guys? I mean,
yeah.
I don't know how to even analyze that and look at it and say, well, I think it's going to go this way or that way. It's two courts racing against each other, and they're both probably about to become heavily politicized. So I don't know. It's kind of becoming what people thought it would be, and that's each court favoring their side. And that, I don't know, it's kind of ugly. I guess I don't really like that. I don't like watching courts becoming politicized. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
Very good. And I think your analysis is spot on. Both those stories are huge, and they really blew up today. We'll talk about, is it Kessler is the lawyer, right? And we'll talk about that article. And then, but we're going to start with Florida State and ACC. Is there anything else, guys, before we jump right into that article from Matt Baker?
Let's jump into it.
All right. The first, we got a little bit business to do. Don McNerney says, "Go Buckeyes." Member for 2 months. Thank you very much, Donnie. We appreciate you being here. Appreciate your loyalty and being a member. And then nice. Donnie McNerney gave another gift membership. He passed that on. If you receive a gift membership by being here, think about passing that on to somebody else. So everybody knows those articles that we've made, those short videos are all in a locked area. And for members to have access to them, that's what we're going to be doing, is providing that access via the memberships. Owen, why don't you tell everybody who got that gift?
This is perfect because that gifted membership went to the runner-up, and the runner-up, you are now, as Bobby Bear would say, the winner.
The winner. I would say that's for true. The runner-up, thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it. After the show's over, go watch those videos that we put in our members section on the website, and I hope you enjoy being here. Also, consider paying that
look
forward.
Look out for the Notre Dame Big Ten video, guys. This has some doozy information in it. Like, there's some information. I might share some of the information on this show. Just have a discussion about it.
Oh, I don't know.
Just one piece of it. Just one.
Okay.
We'll see. But you're going to want to check it out. Notre Dame and the Big Ten.
I think that's great. All right. So let's go to this Tampa Bay article, which I teased before I did the shout outs. This article is written by Matt Baker, Tampa Bay Times. I don't know if I didn't share the link, I'll share it now.
You did.
Did I? Okay. It's written by Matt Baker, Tampa Bay Times. He's been on top of this realignment stuff. He's not the Matt Baker that we've had on the show that has talked about NCAA 25 and the video games and stuff, but both excellent journalists. The title of this thing says How Florida State versus the ACC lawsuits could reach the Supreme Court. So I'm not going to read this word for word, but I do want to get to the meat and bones of the article, and then we can discuss it as we piecemeal through this, guys. Matt says that why this is rare and complicated. He explains what the different states and laws, how they apply to each other, when they can be promoted to the federal level. Evidently, we've missed on some timelines for the federal filings. Immaculate, do you remember any more of that? It's sort of past now that they didn't get those filings in for the federal courts.
There was some mention about, in terms of federal courts, I don't know if either side has actually filed anything to that, and how that would even go in that direction. As of right now, all I have seen is that it's been filings on each other. What I haven't seen yet, which is a little surprising, is I haven't seen an appeal to the decisions in the Florida court. We've seen that in the North Carolina court, where Florida State has appealed the motions, which I thought was pretty rare, but according to Mr. Rohan, that is not the case. So that's pretty standard, but they appealed it, according to the reports, directly to the North Carolina Supreme Court, in which that seems to maybe be jumping a stage or two, but we know that the North Carolina Supreme Court actually assigned this case to the North Carolina court where it's at, with orders of expediency. So that might have opened them up to then being appealed to. I'm not sure.
And Nate vanished, so I'm in charge now. I'm the captain now because Nate vanished. I don't have the article up, of course, because I read my limit at the Tampa Bay apparently, and they paywall you if you read your limit. But it's very interesting in that article. He goes through 4 scenarios. And the first scenario is consolidation. That these 2 courts, you're going to have to go to one or the other. A race to judgment. That was the main one that I was most interested in. A race to judgment. Whoever finishes first,
That's what I think.
according to constitutional law, their ruling becomes the law of the land. So if
Really?
the Florida State,
Okay.
if the Florida State court finishes first,
They'd have to
finds
appeal
it-
higher.
right?
Yeah.
It can be appealed, but
Yeah, that would be like at that level, no matter which stages that becomes, and they'd have to appeal it to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
right. But very interesting that you could just race, and that's exactly what this is. This is a race.
When you see the second judge doing rulings from the bench,
Yeah.
I mean, it was interesting that he didn't do all of them, but he is signaled that he's going to start doing rulings from the bench. So I don't know. And then I saw something that after when you rule from the bench, then you have to get the written orders put out. So maybe that still is taking longer. I don't know. But that was definitely different than the North Carolina court.
Well, we'll know more on Monday too, because on Monday, Judge Cooper in Leon County in the Florida court is slated to have another hearing where he starts making some more decisions on this lawsuit.
He'll probably finish it up.
It'll probably wrap up on Monday, and then he'll have another date set. Meanwhile, I think it's May 2nd, I believe, is the next date in Mecklenburg County, which is North Carolina court. And at that point, they might be pretty far behind the Florida court, depending on how much Judge Cooper gets through on Monday.
Well, there's people have kind of taken up both sides, and some of those folks think North Carolina is ahead still by the way it's going because he did the rulings from the bench. Then they have to get the written orders out. I don't know if that's true or if it's kind of hard to tell these days. A lot of the lawyers giving opinions are only doing so because they actually have some skin in the game, shall we say, which doesn't mean that it's bad, but every lawyer kind of has different opinions on things. So I don't really know where to go on that in terms of who's winning right now. Probably doesn't matter because there's a long way to go. That this is still over motions. Neither one of them has actually had their main hearings yet. So we're still in the opening legs of this race.
So
Right.
consolidation's number 1, number 2. Mo.
Yeah, I'm going to
What's
open it
number
up
2?
here. I'm going to go ahead and pull that article back up. Right. This is, why this is rare and complicated, but I want to get down here to the scenarios. Consolidation. Having 2 cases doubles the numbers of filings, which are complicated by distinct laws. Perhaps both sides agree it's easier to focus on one venue by dropping a case, or they could split it. A Florida court decides the confidentiality of the ACC ESPN contracts, while the North Carolina court rules on the rest. That's a pretty big point right there, guys. That did that share?
I think that sounds a little pie in the sky, to be honest, though. I mean, at this point in time, are they really going to come to that kind of a compromise when it doesn't seem like they can? I don't know. Kind of seems a little contrary to where they are. If they're going to start working that close together, they might as well actually come work together on a settlement.
Well, that's brought up here. That's the next option. But isn't it interesting that they would let Florida, the Sunshine State with sunshine laws, decide the relevancy of revealing the minute details of the ESPN ACC agreement, and then let the North Carolina court decide everything else?
Well, that I mean, if there is a entity that's in Florida that takes public money, and it's part of the ACC, those sunshine laws matter. And in fact, you almost have to default to the most open, because in a situation like this, it tends to rule the roost, if that makes sense. You have to account for that. And so with them, I can see why that would go that way. I don't understand why Florida would then say, okay, you can do the rest. that part you're talking about kind of goes to them by default, simply because it is a Florida law. So it's like saying, here, you can have this thing that you should have anyways, but just let us have the rest. I'm not sure I buy into Florida allowing that, especially when you got the Clemson case that's still lurking here in the
and we've
distance.
got
Like,
the amended complaint from Clemson. I don't know if anybody picked up on it. There is a electronic transmission that went through to all the attorneys in the case saying that Clemson has filed their amended complaint in Pickens County. Now, I checked Pickens County Court after 5 p.m. today. There was still nothing there. So as of Wednesday, they sent that out. Still nothing there. I hate to see that they would drop that on Monday during the middle of the hearing in Florida, but they probably will.
maybe they're having more service games going on.
Yeah.
If you can't get that served, you can't get that post.
Yep. But let's look at scenario number 2 here real quick from Matt Baker at the Tampa Bay Times. Let's say North Carolina Supreme Court rejects Florida State's attempt to dismiss or pause the ACC's case. Suppose the same thing plays out in Leon County. Judge Cooper rejects the rest of the ACC's initial arguments, and the league eventually appeals to the Florida Supreme Court. If both home court advantages hold, then the state Supreme Court disagree. Disputes between states are decided by the U.S. Supreme Court. So that's some scenario by which it would get to the United States Supreme Court. People were mentioning earlier this would go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court doesn't necessarily have to hear it. They can kick it back to another appeals court. But that is the scenario by which it could actually advance to the United States Supreme Court.
So they'd have to disagree at the county level, and then at the Supreme Court level of each state, and then the real Supreme Court.
If the Florida State Supreme Court and the North Carolina State Supreme Court disagreed with each other, it would immediately be fast-tracked, I guess, to the United States Supreme Court. U.S. Supreme Court doesn't have to hear the case. They can kick it back to another appeals court. Up to them whether or not they want to hear the case, which would be interesting. I mean, with the composition of the court, do they really want to hear that case? I mean, there's a lot of ACC people on that court.
It sounds like a great drama, a great novel. But the likelihood of these schools and the ACC, that really wanting this to go to that level and to have that level of scrutiny, to have that level of media. Because think about it. The type of media that is paying attention right now, it's not big deal. It's not big time. This isn't even talked about among media that most people pay attention to. It's going to get that way if it goes to state Supreme Courts. And if it was to go to the U.S. Supreme Court, everyone's going to know about it. And you know what? They're not going to look at this and think highly of it about anyone involved. They're going to be like, grow up, children. Go sit in a room, frickin' talk, and get this figured out and stop wasting this much taxpayer dollars. So it sounds great on paper. You're reading like, oh, that would be fantastic. But I have a hard time believing that they'll actually let it go that far.
And Jan Hulk brings up a great point. If this goes to the Supreme Court, wouldn't that take a year to happen? That would take years.
Take too long, way too long. They don't have that much time.
Yeah, it would definitely take years. So I'm not big on that option. I don't think it goes that far, but
it's great for the article, though.
It's great for the article, but here's the most intriguing one. This is the one I like the most.
Wait, one sec. But who's at risk of losing more if it goes to the Supreme Court? Like, is it Florida State reputationally, or is it the ACC reputationally? I agree with Matt Gill. It's 100% the ACC, just more
and money-wise,
and just the disruption. It's just going to get so ugly. Florida State can just kick back, relax, and have a drink while the ACC just burns.
And it's not just them. Everyone else that's in the same business, they also have some potential to lose here. What happens if the Supreme Court is ruling on the constitutionality of a grant of rights agreement? Do you think there's not going to be anyone pressuring the ACC to just effing settle. Like, don't screw the whole industry right here. Now, just go settle. Like that's where my opinion is, another thing that happened today was the Washington State president, announced his retirement. He's kind of been the black sheep in the CFP. I think right now that's changing. I think that maybe whoever the president is on that board from the ACC, which funny enough is the Clemson president, now that I think about it, they might actually become the black sheep of that, because they're the ones that are going to be holding up CFP business this time around.
Yeah. All right, Moan. Yeah, we can jump to the next one. Thanks for
All right.
letting us discuss that a little bit more.
Welcome back, Nate.
Hey. Yeah. I
We're
don't
buying
know.
time for you.
My computer just died on me. I go ahead. If you're leading,
All right.
go ahead, Moan.
Yep. I think the Tampa Bay Times went after him. That's what happened.
That's
Maybe.
probably right. Race to judgment. Both parties have accused the other of a race to the courthouse to try to secure their preferred venue. Our third end game then would be a fitting conclusion. This is the perfect setting for the race to the final judgment, said Texas A&M's George. Fast forward through all the motions and appeals until one court issues that final judgment. That's when the Constitution's full faith and credit clause comes into play. The clause generally means one state must abide by, in parentheses, give full faith and credit to, the final judgment of another state. If the ACC wins in North Carolina, that ruling applies in Florida, even if the Florida state suit is ongoing. Game over. Attorneys could try to win this race by slowing down parts of the process, but the timeline depends more on each court's schedule than procedural tactics. All right, who wants to start with that thought?
About the settlement part, or are you going back?
I just think the race part.
The race.
Because we see that Florida State is trying to really fast track this. I mean, they had their case 2 weeks ago, and now they're having their second one another 2 weeks. So, or 3 weeks.
I think that really depends upon the judges.
Yeah. Which is what they say here.
And, that means, I hate to say it, but that means they're kind of complicit in being politicized if they're really, if we look at this and go, this feels like it's being rushed. Because we know, the Supreme Court of North Carolina kind of already did that. When they sent this to that court with orders of expediency, that's basically what they're saying is, this is a priority whenever everything gets done on this, like all the orders, all the service, everything gets done. And the soonest you can put this back into your hearing room, you are ordered by the North Carolina Supreme Court to do so, which means other cases that might have been on the docket that day, well, they get pushed back a day. That means all other business there, those people are being affected by this too when that happens. I don't know if people realize that every other bit of court, they have times when they're set. And whenever this thing has to go, the Supreme Court of North Carolina has ordered that all those other ones, they just get pushed back a day. So there's a lot of people that are getting affected by this that we don't even know who they are.
Remember the material discussion that the Florida judge mentioned about like Florida State receiving public funds in the state, and that kind of took them outside of the realm of where North Carolina could basically opine on Florida state matters. That's kind of how I understood it, at least. How does that come into play? I mean, Florida State gets state funds, and all of a sudden, if there's a rush to judgment in North Carolina, all of a sudden issues something that's still impacting Florida State and the state of Florida funds and everything. So it gets really hairy with that. And I just, at the end of the day, because of that factor, I just don't think there could be any teeth coming out of North Carolina impacting Florida State at all, because of the state funding issue. Like, I think that's where this dies, and I think that's going to lose all the teeth. So at the end of the day, I just don't know how North Carolina government can dictate anything in this case because of that aspect.
I don't know. I mean, it's a really good question, good point. But, in the real politic world of it, if they get done first, it might hold. We don't really know. I'm certainly not an expert on it. None of us really are. And
Right.
I think that even people who we would consider to be experts, if they were being truthful and honest, would probably say they don't know either. That's the thing about unprecedented moments is these are the times when these guys just have to get in there and it's a real fight. You don't have some other thing that happened in the past to lean upon and make it easier. I don't know how that goes, man. That's a really good point.
And immaculate. There isn't an answer. That's why we have the judicial system. The answer is going to be dictated or settled. There isn't an answer for
it's a real fight.
That question, right? So it's going to be determined. Maybe there will be an answer at some point. Maybe not if it's settled. But like that's some of the thinking that goes into this. And like my thinking is like I don't care whatever happens in North Carolina. I don't think it's going to have any bearing on Florida State.
It might not.
So, so we'll find out. But like I think that's just a huge swing factor to consider.
Right. You're going to see the federal courts have to argue sovereign immunity brought before them in that instance. But I think the most important thing for Florida State, and maybe for all the teams in the ACC that want to get out, is getting the judge to rule that they can provide, that ESPN must provide all that documentation, the ACC must provide all that documentation 100% unredacted. We saw this week they unredacted it in North Carolina, and I think they took the black line off like 4 words.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
We still need the full financial arrangement between ESPN, ACC, as well as their third-tier rights. So if the judge in Florida says, hey, sunshine laws, these have to be brought out into the open, that's going to be very interesting. If that even gets to that point, or at that point, the ACC and ESPN just go, let's settle. Let's settle before that gets out.
Sometimes you got to wonder if some of these lawyers, if they order way more to be redacted, so that way when the court starts coming and saying we need to see some of this undone, that they then say, oh yeah, no problem, we got you. And you undo some of that, some of which you never really cared if it got out anyway. So that way the stuff you really don't want people to get a hold of never even gets broached. I'm not a legal strategist, but I could see myself doing that type of a thing if I had to. Like you just over redact and you give yourself a big cushion of redaction before the stuff that you really don't want them to see. And so you're chipping away at stuff that they actually don't care that you see. So that's kind of what it looked like to me. The stuff that was blacked out, I'm like, these are just numbers, like how much they're getting paid. We've seen this stuff already anyways. Like it's not that big of a deal.
It's like negotiation leverage, right? That's basically what you're kind of saying too. Like I want to redact everything. It's going to be irrelevant, half the stuff, but
I'll
let some of this go here.
We're really helpful. See, look how friendly we are, Court. You should love us. Like,
of course. Why wouldn't you do that? That's smart. That's business. The smart business lawyering.
I would think so. I would think that's a strategy. I don't know for sure, but that's what it looks like to me.
All right, which brings us to our last scenario: settlement. The drama, stakes, and circumstances of these dueling lawsuits could be a fascinating legal case study, except James F. Haggerty expects it all to become moot. The whole notion that there will be 2 verdicts at some point, or even 1 verdict, is probably far-fetched, said Haggerty, an attorney, author, and communications consultant. It's likely something will bring the 2 parties together, and that tends to be money.
And that's why he's a good writer. Because he held the part that's likely the truth and really probably just could have been the whole article itself. He saved that to the end. So you had all the fun, cool stuff to read. Like, oh man, imagine it goes to the Supreme Court, when this one right here is likely where it goes. And they're working their positions at the settlement table to see who is going to be a little bit stronger when the time comes.
Yeah, I said it earlier this week. I think the ACC isn't going to get as much as they want, and Florida State and Clemson are going to pay more than they want. I don't think, I think it's a win-win for everybody when they do it this way, but they're not going to get 100% win. Florida State and Clemson aren't going to get 100% win. It might end up being $220 million to get out of the conference.
I don't know. The moment SEC and ESPN say yes to North Carolina State, I think that North Carolina Board of Governors is coming in hard. I think that's the big threat looming over everybody.
Immaculate. So while we're on this point, like somebody's got to justify how North Carolina State makes sense for the SEC.
I don't know. They don't pay
I
me
know
to do
that
that.
that's being said a lot, but
Mhm.
like somebody give me a justification for that outside of just a piggybacking off North Carolina. Because like that one, I mean, I look at the numbers a lot, and here's a statement right here. It's a true statement. North Carolina State's a stretch for the Big 12 ad. They're not even a given for the Big 12. I'm serious. Like, and so saying that they can get in the SEC just to piggyback is like a big statement. And I just don't think that if you look at their numbers, football viewership's not great, below average, like certainly below average for the SEC. Like you're doubling up markets too in North Carolina. UNC is good because of basketball, but if you brought Duke along with you, it's more valuable than NC State with North Carolina for the SEC. So I can't see UNC is not so valuable. It warrants 2 additions to like a conference like the SEC. That's what I'm having trouble with, right? In the long term. So I just don't see why the SEC would even gobble that or even consider it. It's just not good business at NC State.
I think the best business right now is to get solutions very quick. There's much bigger fights to be had. If say they sat in a room and ESPN and SEC looked at each other and said, it's not the best business choice in the world right now. It's not. I personally don't think it's any different than picking Duke. I know people talk about Duke, North Carolina in that game. It's basketball. Even if it's the best basketball game of them all, it's still just basketball. And North Carolina State was in the Final Four. And North Carolina State does have the largest following in the state, more so than North Carolina. North Carolina is more of a national brand than it is a state brand, which is the reality about them. But to the point, if ESPN and SEC just sit there and say, we are running out of time. We have how many lawsuits all ran by the same guy? I mean, that stuff is absolutely coordinated. And we have that story coming up later. All of this is coming down on them. What you're talking about, I guess the best thing I could say to it to sum it up is don't lose sight of the forest for the trees. You're looking at this one thing, which you're on, and you're right with your numbers. But I'm just saying, I think the bigger picture overall might cause the SEC and ESPN to look at each other and say, if we say yes to them, the Board of Governors says yes, and we move. If we say no to them, nothing happens. And this continues. And it goes to the next court. And it goes to the next court. And at some point in time, while I agree with you, and I'm certainly not going to dispute your numbers because you're way better at that than I am. I'm just trying to bring this other perspective of even if it's not the best business choice of all of them, if you were to lay them all out, it might be the business choice that they have to make, if that makes sense to you.
Can you flesh that one out a little bit more? Like why? I guess like SEC, what's in it for the SEC?
North Carolina, and
breaking
apart the ACC and some of the money. Once the ACC kind of this happens, their numbers are going to go down. Like they're going to get less money from ESPN. That's going to be renegotiated. That money is going to come to the SEC. SEC's tried to get ESPN to pay for a 9th game. They tried like twice. ESPN said no. So then they get the extra money for the 9th game, maybe even a 10th game. I'm not there. I don't know all the things that they could work on and deal. I'm just saying they come to an agreement on whatever business terms would be needed to come to stop the logjam. Because as I'm saying, this is the thing now that's going to affect the CFP, just like Washington State did. Just like how he was in there and he held things up, this is going to hold that up because they're going to try and figure out how we're going to make up this tournament in 26. We need to know who's going to be in the ACC. We need to know who's going to be in the Big Ten. We need to know who's going to be in the SEC. We need to know who's going to be in the ACC still. What schools are going to get pulled up from the AAC. This affects so much. And now I didn't think we'd hear about the CFP until after the football season. They're already talking about meeting again over the 2026. So they are putting the screws to this saying, we want to start right now, and you guys are going to hold us up. You're going to see the same thing happen with, they met here, but they couldn't come to any deals. They couldn't come to anything. So they're going to start wasting people's time, which they're going to understand is going to start to piss people off. And they know that there's going to be a reevaluation coming in 2028. So even if they do hold everything up and do keep everything bad, they're just going to get reevaluated lower. So as much as you're right about the numbers, I'm just saying, I think in a bigger picture situation, that decision moves so many other decisions. That decision to take North Carolina and North Carolina State as a whole. And if ESPN decides we would rather pay them full than have all of this information come out in court, and the SEC says, okay, we'll take full payment, no problem, then that's it. Like, now, someone might say that that's crazy talk, and that's cool. That's fine. I just think at some point in time, they're holding up bigger business than what, who's the perfect pick for that spot, who gets us a little bit extra here. I don't know. And in the end, you might be right. That does hold it up, and that does make this super messy going forward. But
it sounds
North Carolina can't go without that board saying yes.
Right. And I do agree with that. And that is the case and everything. But like with fire and pressure, decisions are made, right? Like we all know that.
Yeah.
And of course, like in desperation. And this might get to a desperate place. And I actually think it will. And here
might already be
so
there.
from for ESPN, that makes a ton of sense. And maybe ESPN just puts leverage on the SEC to do it. But like if I'm Sankey and I'm the SEC outside of ESPN, because who knows, maybe like after this contract cycle, maybe they do a deal with Fox. They're not married to ESPN for life. I mean, they give the the SEC network, but like they might have other media rights, agreements in place and everything. So it's a long-term decision. I don't think it's just like this contract decision, Stu. You might get pro rata here for the next 5-7 years, but like you got to look at a 20-year decision, 50-year decision with like an NC State. And like, here's the thing is like viewership's below average for NC State. Historically, football's been below average from SEC standards. You're in a redundant market with North Carolina. I don't believe that North Carolina State's AAU. Like, there's really on it. There's just nothing that justifies that outside of just piggybacking off UNC, and that's fine if you're so valuable that you can warrant basically almost 2 times like an entry and everything. So, like if you're Notre Dame, maybe you can get away with that, but I don't think UNC's Notre Dame in this type of game. Or if you're in Ohio State, that probably makes sense because you're so dang valuable. You're bringing enough value for both schools. But if I'm the SEC, I'm like, why would I reduce my payouts over the long term for my members currently by doing that? That's just like, that's not very wise business from my perspective, right? From the long term. And so I just have a hard time seeing them like feel desperate about making that move. I mean, you just added Texas, the Longhorns, and the Oklahoma Sooners. Like elite top 5, top 10 football brands. And you're talking about bringing over NC State as a piggyback with UNC. It's like, man,
someone's got to lose.
And I think that the loser is going to be NC State.
No, but I mean, like, honestly, someone has to lose every game. But what you want from your losers in football is to pull you up somewhere else. NC State was just in the Final Four. Their basketball and honestly, their entire athletic department is pretty good. SEC also cares about baseball. They're good there. They are the larger brand within the state of North Carolina. If you think the state of North Carolina matters, UNC is more of a national brand. I mean, people graduate from there and spread. North Carolina State's like the hardy in-state. People stick around. So I just think that it comes down to it. You're right. SEC is not going to take lesser payments for it. ESPN will have to pay full for North Carolina State. It just comes down to, I think, the whole idea of them getting Discovery in this case, they're so worried about trade secrets. If that's really that big of a deal to them, I think that there might be more value in protecting those trade secrets than there is in, what difference there might be in North Carolina State versus Duke in value. Because in the end, what their ratings are in the ACC, in my opinion, they just don't matter. Because when you're in the ACC, you're getting ESPN2, and you're going up against SEC and Big Ten teams. They're their setups. You're also going against some Big 12 matchups that are probably pretty big. So the ACC is always just getting crapped on TV. Whereas the moment you take North Carolina State and you put them in the SEC, they're getting an SEC protected matchup, which means you're not competing against any of your SEC team. Or if it is, you might be on like on regular ESPN, but they're moving up the stage. You're getting a boost in your viewership just by being out of the ACC. Does that make sense? Like,
oh yeah,
like their numbers, those numbers matter. I'm not trying to say they don't matter. It's just everyone who leaves the ACC is going to get a boost because you're competing against less. I don't know. I guess
that's more about the SEC and not about the school. Like you plug any
that's
school,
just it.
and you get
Like exactly.
things, right?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
But like, I guess what I'm saying is the NC State's brand's not up to par for the SEC. That's what I'm saying. Like that, it's below average, and like it's the brand itself is a Big 12 brand, and like it's arguable if NC State even qualifies for the Big 12.
I would say the NC State's brand is equal to Missouri's. When Missouri came in, they thought so little of Missouri when they added them that they stuck them in the East Division. They did not care about that at all. It made the Texas A&M grab possible. That's all Missouri was, is for scheduling. It wasn't like, oh, we're getting these great Missouri numbers. I mean, it didn't really help with anything in that regard, and they didn't really care that much about them. It was just one of those, yeah, sure, fine, whatever. This makes it even numbers for scheduling. And, a good team who's got them on the schedule is going there to play them or whatever. We're showcasing the other team. Like if Alabama's on a run and they're playing Missouri, well, everyone's watching for Alabama. It's the same with North Carolina State. Say, LSU's on a big run and they're going to go play at North Carolina State. Well, all you really want from North Carolina State in that regard is that they have a good fan base that's there and makes for a good scene for TV. North Carolina State and Virginia Tech do that. The odd one out in that is actually North Carolina. And even worse in that regard is Virginia, which is why sometimes we look at those as great ads. And I'm saying, for what you need them to do, I don't know. You don't really need them to pull numbers. Whoever they're playing against, because you only need to put them on TV like twice, as per these agreements. I don't know. You playing Alabama, you playing Louisiana State, you playing Texas, whoever you're playing, and you schedule them against, that's who's carrying the numbers. It's not so much North Carolina State. They just have to provide a good atmosphere if it's a home game.
Well, here's a number that really matters, guys. Kerry Go Knowles has donated $9.99 through Super Chat.
Nice. MVP again.
Number. Let him cook. Let him cook now. Let him cook. I said let him cook.
Thank you very much, Kerry. We could unpack, I think it's his PATC tonight, that Louisville was school number 9 that voted for the ACC to sue FSU and Clemson.
Well, if that's probably the case, I mean, that wouldn't be surprising at all because Louisville, I mean, they're not going to be going to the P2 right here. So I guess that's predictable. What do you guys think about that?
Well, I would go back to your point. Thank you again, Kerry, for the super chat. Much
Kerry.
Appreciated, my dude. The North Carolina State argument, I would just go back to it and say, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, guys. We don't know how much the SEC values the state of North Carolina. If they find expanding into North Carolina is that much value to them, I can instantly see them taking both schools just to get it over with. But that's just me. Let's get to some comments here from some folks.
Yeah, chat just lit up big with that one. We kind of got them stirred up.
Yeah, I'll try and get to as many as we can.
It's a passionate debate because that's a lot of the steam, right? The smoke's on NC State going.
You nailed it.
There isn't a lot of pushback on that, but from the analytics side, from the business side, and your point's right, but at the end of the day, this is a business decision, and you're getting two schools in the same market. That's one of the problems. It's redundancy, and you're getting the lesser school in the market too, in NC State.
How do we feel about that? I mean, this has become a debate that's changed. I've been following realignment for a while, and market was always a top thing, and nowadays it kind of seems like we're shifting away from that. because with social media and everything, people have kind of become more aware of everything outside of their local realm, and market seems to not quite be as big of a deal. Whereas branding, rivalries, look, in realignment back in the days, we did not give a your rivalries did not matter. Like, it just, no one cared. People were going to watch your local regional team play whomever they played. Like, it didn't matter. But now people are kind of shifting around and maybe not watching their favorite team because a better matchup is on over here, and that's going to be wilder. Crowd's going to be crazy. People know now, and they're smart to it and hip to it, that rivalry games tend to be better games. They just play up to a higher level against each other. So those are the ones I think that networks are really going for. And I would say North Carolina State and North Carolina together provides you a rivalry, whereas separate, North Carolina and Duke, I don't think that's as good of a rivalry in football as North Carolina and North Carolina State. And that's like your numbers are, that's 80% of the deal. North Carolina, Virginia, while that might be a longer rivalry, those are maybe, out of the ones we're talking about, those stands, those fan bases, the atmosphere of those might be the worst. So even if you have those two playing, that maybe only gives you a 100% guarantee that you're not going to have a good atmosphere for that game. So I don't know. I would love to pick the minds of some of these ESPN folks these days and see what metrics really matter. Because I start to wonder if maybe rivalries have now trumped market. I don't know. You could be right, though.
All right. Well, let's get to some comments real quick.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
I know, chat. I see you lighting up. I see them scrolling.
We'll get to it.
I want to let your voices be heard on this topic. Rock and Rant has a solution for North Carolina State. Do a deal with Prada for backpacks. Get Caitlin Clark to do the ad and wear it to the Olympics. Revenue gap solved.
Yes.
Probably right if Caitlin Clark would endorse it. Probably.
Yeah, she's kind of liquid gold at this point in time.
Mr. Monkey says, if we're going to say bad things about Missouri, can I help?
Yeah, unfortunately, he just left.
Go.
I started that for him, and then he's like, he had to go. I was like, damn it, Monkey. I wanted to hear what you had to say.
Tony Lawson reminds you that Missouri won the East twice when they joined.
They did. And may I comment real quick? I promise you I'll keep
ahead.
this quick. Missouri has made their name. They were not respected at the time, but they have. It's like they just had this huge chip on their shoulder and said, we're going to show you. And they have. They have made themselves so valuable. And now they're getting the money for their new stadium. And how about the idea of Missouri and Kansas being in the same conference? I don't care if it's the Big Ten or the SEC or whatever. Who would have ever thought that you'd look at that and say, that's a must-see rivalry that you're going to see on TV? Two brand new stadiums, two programs on the rise, fan bases that hate each other, pure hate. Like if you have game day there on ESPN, you'll probably have to keep those fan bases apart, like not in the same area type of hate. So I don't know. I just want to say Tony's right. And Missouri has absolutely worked their way into being much more respected.
All right. By the way, Nate will not be rejoining us tonight. He continues to have PC issues.
Damn.
And he continues to blow up my
PC.
phone.
Is that what that was?
ZP. North Carolina State football is legit right now, better than many of the SEC and Big Ten teams.
That's a Clemson fan.
There we go. Clemson fan. Well, yeah, NC State historically is maybe a top 50 program. So most of the SEC schools are inside that top 50. It would be one of the worst historical football programs in the SEC, going back to that. So I know we have disagreement here. We both feel strongly in everything. It's going to be very interesting when it shakes out to see what happens.
Yeah, but the thing is like everything you're saying is right. Like I don't discount anything you're saying, and you could absolutely be right. I'm just trying to present like another perspective to it of like maybe sometimes like the absolute best pristine business decision isn't the one that gets made, and in realignment history that happens a lot because it's just so kind of chaotic. And
Right.
Right. DP again. Immaculate, great point. UNC versus Alabama would have dramatically different ratings.
Yeah, just like like everyone in the ACC gets their best ratings when they play Florida State or Clemson. I mean, that's how it really is in the SEC too. It's not whoever is the lower team. That's not really who's carrying it anyways. So, if you want to build those programs, schedule them to go against those teams. Bring an Alabama to Chapel Hill. Bring an Alabama. Is it Raleigh? Isn't that where North Carolina State is? Anyways,
Yes.
bring them there. Cause these big games to happen there, and you'll be shocked. Like you can build a program, especially. I mean, in North Carolina, that's right down there in the South too. I consider North Carolina to be the South. I don't necessarily say the same about Virginia, but they're down there. I mean, they could turn those around, and in the SEC, those could become major programs, and we'd be sitting here just like we are with Missouri, going, "Holy hell, they really did it!
They really did it.
They really." Because I thought Missouri was just going to be a kick-around team in the SEC.
DP, you could make a really good argument that North Carolina State sports is more competitive than UNC right now, which is kind of what he said about the football.
Across the board. I mean, their basketball team looks better. I think baseball, they're a top team, which matters a lot in the SEC. I don't know all their sports, so I'm not going to go down the line. But that's one I see SEC people talk about a lot that I'm just like going, okay, y'all really care about baseball. All right, fine. So,
well, if it's Wolfpack backpack, could it be Tar Heel tag along? What the? If we're going to put North Carolina State in the front
around here,
immaculate. So with your wolf logo, I was just thinking like Wolfpack backpack for you. It just sums it up right there. That's exactly what I was thinking, Moan. You are the cheerleader for Wolfpack backpack.
Got to pull for the little guy.
I still prefer Cavalier souvenir.
Souvenir.
Antonio Baker, UNC and Duke in the Big Ten is just way better in my opinion. That's one way of looking at it. I don't see Duke making it to the Big Ten.
What is it? Yeah, the Big Ten. Yeah, I don't see it either.
They're too small.
The Board of Governors coup, man. That hostile takeover. It changes everything. As a Big Ten guy, we used to think North Carolina was a shoe, and they're eventually going to be a member. I don't see it happening.
I don't even see them competing for it.
That takeover was such a big deal. Like that, to me, is something that should be written about at some point in time. There should be a book about what happened behind the scenes to make that happen. I mean, when you take one of your members of your board and you place it in North Carolina to become the chancellor and to run things on the inside, and then you completely neuter the board of trustees from being able to make any decisions of relevance whatsoever, they have essentially changed the entire way that the whole North Carolina school, like university system works, and what essentially party makes the decisions there. Not talking national parties, but just like interest groups within the state. It was a coup. It was a hostile takeover. So it changes things.
From
What's the likelihood that UNC and NC State get stuck in the ACC because of their politics? Like, that's a growing likelihood. I think if
there's a chance.
Lead NC State backpacking on, it's basically not a backpack. It's just a weight that you're not going. I don't think you're going to be able to move. And if NC State comes, I would think that UNC is not valuable enough to go anywhere. They're going to sit in the ACC. That's how I see it. Seriously, I just don't see it. I don't see them qualifying for the SEC or the Big Ten. And if their politics want to get involved in that, they probably deserve it too. They're going to try to stick those two together. That's ridiculous, in my opinion. It's ridiculous. That'd be your local politics. Say, well, these schools need to come together and stuff because we're all NC State fans out here, and you can't leave us behind because we're going to backpack. Like, that just drives me crazy to even think of that is going on right now. That's stupid politicking and everything when you've got to take care of 19 schools in that state that are public schools, and you're focused on NC State. Like, you're actually going to lose the battle probably, in my opinion, because you're going to stick them together. And you're going to actually lose revenue for the overall system because you won't let UNC go to the place they should go. You're going to try to backpack on that. It really pisses me off, honestly, just thinking about it. It's ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
And NC State.
It sounds like Norm Macdonald from Dirty Work. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
like you go to a conference if you can warrant it. NC State does not warrant it in any way, shape, or form. I think it's crazy that NC State has even talked about going to the SEC.
All right, this is a hot button issue for you.
It is. I get it though, because of the Utah, experience of going through what the pack is. Like, you have a very visceral experience about this stuff and who makes it and who doesn't, who gets left behind, who doesn't. And that's why on that type of stuff, I'm just not going to counter it, because I get it, man. Like, that's like one of those things, like some of us, especially Big Ten fans, we just kind of have to sit back and go, all right, I get it. Like, like they say in the SEC, it just means more to some, like this. To me, I'm just kind of looking at the situation, trying to figure out possibilities, but I get it. I mean, people who are looking at the fairness and the equitable side of things here, I just think that in the end, some of these business dealings they're going to get the best deal possible, and that might be gained upon or found upon in an ugly kind of fashion. I mean, they don't make a move like that unless there's big time stuff on the line. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I guess their play is to try to get both of those schools money, the big money, so that then they can spread the other money to the other schools. I mean, just one of the little things that happened there is they got the gambling money that's now being spread out to the schools there. And it was like $1 million per school. And to those smaller schools, that's a huge deal. To the NC State and North Carolina, not as big of a deal, but they're still taking their cuts. So, maybe by getting them up higher and getting them other money, you can take that money and fill it out. Just to kind of go upon what you're saying there. But I get it, man. Like, there's going to be a lot of people who look at it and go, for real? Like, maybe because you want them in the Big 12. And I think North Carolina State would be awesome in the Big 12. It looks like, there's some people in that state who are trying to get them into the SEC.
Yeah.
Well, Nate needs a new computer, I think. But let's get on to more comments. Cooz's Corner, our buddy Justin Coos Walker. And Coos, what up, Coos? And for what it's worth, I'd cheer for North Carolina State over Mizzou. Just giving my unbiased opinion.
There you go.
I think we should make North Carolina State a new drinking game.
Oh, gosh, no kidding, right?
Timothy Green, I think the Iowa Hawkeyes and the Ohio State Buckeyes will be playing in the Big Ten championship this year.
I had to start that one. He was definitely.
Yeah, I was gonna say
he was definitely sucking up to us.
Hope springs eternal for Immaculate.
Like, damn right. I mean, I do think we have the best defense in the conference.
I think Ohio State, Oregon. I think that's what makes the championship game.
Well,
you got any picks? We
don't have to play Oregon this year, so we'll see.
I think Ohio State's definitely in. I like the Oregon pick too. I think Oregon's going to show out pretty well. What about sleepers, guys? Who are the sleeper Big Ten teams this year? Is Wisconsin a sleeper?
Iowa. So I mean, I'm not just saying that. Like, honestly, you got a new offense coming in. We might have this Ohio State quarterback coming in. They're now looking at. We have 3 tight ends that might all be starter quality, and you're only starting 2. So with the whole defense almost entirely coming back, I honestly think they have it. I'm just going to admit it. They got an easy schedule.
Yeah, they do.
I'm going to put this out here, and it's going to sound crazy, but Rutgers.
I knew you were going to say that. I was like,
so you were always choosing Rutgers.
He's an Ohio State fan. He's also a Rutgers fan. Like,
I just think Rutgers is going to be remarkably better.
You're a Rutgers fan. It's okay. It's all right, man.
I think Greg Schiano is a fantastic coach.
They're getting better. Like, for real. I'm agreeing with them, actually, that Rutgers could surprise this year. I just haven't looked at their schedule.
Gary Go knows with another super chat. Let me see. I did let him cook. Let's do Whiskey Problem. Where is Whiskey Problem? Maybe I don't have it on.
Scary.
He's coming.
We'll give him the Joe name.
Yeah, you got to drop.
I care less about the team struggling.
He couldn't care less about the team struggling. Thank you for the super chat, Gary. FSU will not miss playing Boston College, Syracuse, Wake Forest, and North Carolina State every damn year. Talk about erectile dysfunction. LOL.
Oh, man. Let them cook. Let him cook.
Let him cook. I guess so.
Let him cook. Let him cook now. Let him cook. I said, let him cook.
I need to get that Simpsons soundbite. Stop. He's already dead. Thank you again, Carrie, for that much appreciated super chat. If anybody would like to leave a super chat, we answer all super chats. I'm trying to get through some of these comments as quick as I can here. Wendy Kozdras, I hope I'm saying that name right. If not, I'm an asshole and I apologize. Any insight to the 6/30/24 contract clause to get FSU and Clemson out? I'll handle that. That is just the date they have to let the ACC know that they're withdrawing from the conference, that they will not be playing there in 2025. But if they do that, there's also the idea that they could lose all their conference games this season. So, especially if you're Florida State and you think you've got a contender, that might be a dangerous thing to do unless you know you have some security and some promises from the ACC. Scott Schrader's in the house. Hey, Wild, I heard Touchdown Jesus just hit the transfer portal. I think he's talking about Notre Dame.
Yeah, maybe so.
He wants to get paid. He wants money for his name, image, and likeness. Keep chopping, a Rutgers fan. At least somebody here agrees with me. Keep chopping. UCLA alone wasn't that attractive either. With USC, sure, fine, whatever. Got a great point.
Talk about the backpack. I mean,
you guys, we're talking. I understand the point. Keep chopping, but like, look, I know that we talk about markets, like, and everyone can say, okay, markets don't matter. But Bob Thompson's been on our show before and said markets do matter still, and so it's still relevant. And that's somebody that's in the know, that's been in the decision room. He's telling us that, so we can believe that. Markets are relevant. You're talking about LA versus Raleigh. Like, do you know how big LA in the DMA is versus Raleigh? It's 4 or 5 times bigger.
Could I counter that real quick?
Go ahead.
John, is that market paying attention, though? They can't even fill their stands.
Like, as Bob said, really the market is about, like, the upside, like the multiplier upside if you're good. But it's also about, like, sponsorship and branding opportunities, too. It brings value, even if people don't show up to the games. So there's ancillary benefits with that. So I get it. It makes sense. But, like, I think that LA is an exception in this case.
Yeah, and I don't think we can think of anything. Maybe UCLA layaway. I don't know. Come up with something that rhymes with UCLA. It's a great point,
the Trojans horse. The Trojans horse, right?
There you go. Daniel Gygax, best bet last year was Iowa to straight up win and the under. Yeah, every Iowa game, bet the under. If it's 12, bet the under.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Iowa's the only team I've ever seen with like a 19.5 over under.
Yeah, comparing Iowa to Oregon, if you look at Oregon's conference schedule, I think they have more opportunities to lose than Iowa does. Which
they do, but they're quality losses.
It doesn't matter if you lose. We're talking about the conference. It all comes down to your record. Like, going to the conference championship, as we were talking earlier, it's going to come down to the record, and that's it. And so I'm going to be laughing a little bit if we get some angry Oregon fans coming on here just railing at me about how terrible Iowa looks, and yet they made it. Because Oregon loses one other game in conference, and I don't think they're going to beat out Iowa. I think Iowa's going to get crushed by Ohio State, and that's it.
OPD Don, the Raging Cajun, you take North Carolina State for the local feed and take UNC for the nationwide feed like an airline hub. Some routes lose money to feed the best routes. Hope that makes sense. I understood it.
Makes sense.
Makes sense, Opie. Thank you for the comment. Movie Time Blues, the state of Virginia just passed a law allowing NIL. Mm-hmm. Keep an eye on that. Yes, they did. And everybody's losing their minds because it allows schools to actually directly engage in NIL.
I think Mississippi just passed theirs. We're watching the dominoes fall. It's going to be state after state after state. Because once with every state that passes, there's more pressure on a state to pass it. Your schools, your big donors, your people of influence and power are going to be coming to those state legislatures. Remember, these are small people with small business. Like, they are more susceptible to this. You're just going to see it one after another. So, and that's going to be very chaotic because they're going to have differences in those rules. They're going to try and do little things to give their schools a little benefit. And then then when it gets real crazy is when you see changes made to those. When they come back around and you see those changes and you go, why the F are you doing that? And you know it's because some other state's doing it that way. And that was proven to be better. So that's when I think a national policy will come into play. But we're probably going to get every single state on board before that happens.
All right. Antonio Baker, you should be worried about Scarlet Knights. Crying, laughing. I'm telling you what, Scarlet Knights will be bowl eligible next year. Take that one to the bank.
They were this year, weren't they?
They were this year, but I think they were 5-7 and got in on that.
I thought they were 6-6.
No, I thought they were 5-7, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I'm going to believe
they'll be
you.
6-6 this year. Yeah, they'll be at least 6 wins this year, I think. I think they're going to surprise people. You can't just walk in there and walk over Rutgers anymore.
They had some close losses.
They had some close losses. Immaculate is a champion of the downtrodden.
Can't help it. You're an Iowa fan. We're getting downtrodden entire realignment. Kidding me?
That's true. Wild Ute was in here just crapping on North Carolina State fans all night. He was like, they're the worst program ever. DP, Iowa seems to find a way to win, though. Only got to win by 1, no matter what the total score. That's true.
That's right.
Man, Iowa's getting hammered here in chat. You're getting into it all. I put some in there. I'm gonna take the blows, but some folks have some choice.
I like your Iowa pick. Your Iowa pick's actually compelling.
I made that pick last year. I said 11-1 at the start of the season last year. They ended up 10-2. So we'll see.
Hey, Immaculate, how many people does Iowa get at their spring game?
Dude, I don't think anyone pays attention to the spring game because it's just going to be the most boring game of ever. You imagine Iowa's offense versus Iowa's defense, and that's all you get? Yeah, I have no idea. Probably 10. No, really, they fill up. But seriously,
Dan Meyer, Iowa is definitely a sleeper. They have been sleeping on offense since Hayden Fry retired.
Tell them, I got some shots coming at me right here, and I started them. I'm like, that's right. I'll take them.
Right.
You get a thumbs up just for referencing Hayden Fry. Nobody else in the chat probably knows who Hayden Fry is. That's so old.
Oh, everyone knows who Hayden Fry is. Come on,
everyone knows.
TV show about the guy.
My mom hated Hayden Fry.
Why's that?
She just thought he was an asshole.
They were Ohio State fans. Everyone else is assholes besides them.
That's right.
That's right.
Big Ten rules. You'd know this.
That's true. If anybody was playing against Ohio State, she hated him.
You're an asshole. Yeah.
You're an asshole. Let me pull up this other article that I know we wanted to talk about briefly. Or we can do more comments. What do you guys want to do?
We'll pull up this article. We'll get to comments at the end here.
Okay. We're going to jump through this artitle as quick as we can.
Spare me the beating that Chad is giving me right now.
Yeah. I know Immaculate.
Chad's beating us all today.
Oh, they're laying in right now hard. It's great.
Yeah. Even when she was old and ready to die, my mom said, I can't stand that Hayden Fry. We'd have to explain to her Hayden Fry wasn't coaching anymore.
That makes no sense at all. I can't. Why she hate Hayden Fry so much? The guy had the best coaching tree in the history of college football.
Yeah, but he would just walk. He was had his chin out and that flat bill. She just couldn't stand him. I don't know.
And Iowa was good. I mean, they
were very good.
Then. So if you were able to beat Ohio State, you were not going to be liked at Ohio State.
And they had John Cooper.
Iowa has 5 national championships. Iowa's 5 national championships.
Dude, people sleep on the Iowa brand and Iowa value in that state, and even wider than that, because Iowa puts out a lot of people who move out into the world and continue to follow them. So it's bigger than if you just look at Iowa and there's 4 million people. It's bigger than that.
All right. So the title of this article is Meet the Man Responsible for Bringing Disorder to College Athletics and Who Could Shape Its Future. Jeffrey
This
Kessler is the
freaking
lead
guy.
attorney in what is shaping up to be the most revolutionary case in NCAA history. Why don't you break this down instead of having me read it here real quick, Immaculate? Because I know you
Yes,
were itching for this article.
the best way to do that is go to the very end, if you would.
Very end. Okay.
The very end. There's a whole lot there to read, folks, and I highly suggest you read this. But if we just want,
Yeah, I'll
one
put the link
little
in
bit,
chat.
like he goes this part right there. Actually, you just kind of passed it up. There's 4 points that he talks about here.
Okay.
That for you, look at the number 1, the conferences. I think you would like that because this is something you touched on.
Conferences. NCAA economic regulations around compensation are eliminated, and the individual conferences compete with each
You're
other by setting their own regulations and rules, creating one marketplace standard for athletic compensation.
That's
I'm
a
for it.
whole different thing for conferences. That they don't do that now. They're not their own entities, really. They all play kind of by the same rules. And I've talked about we're moving away from a model where you have 5 major conferences competing on the same model, just in different regions. So now where it looks like we're going to have 4 major conferences that are each working on a different model. And where this comes in is they can create their own rules and regulations internally for that. So like the Big Ten is your big national conference. You're going to have to figure out a rule set and all the marketplace standards for employees, all these different things that they have to do in the future. They can figure out what's best for them. The SEC can figure out what's best for them. The Big 12, which is kind of now also a national conference, but at a lower pay level, they're going to have to figure out something different than the Big 10. And the ACC, if it becomes this elite, private, focused conference, look, we're seeing all the NLRB cases. That's an entirely different set of worries and issues that they would have to deal with. So, if these conferences start to set their own rules a little bit more in the future, I think that that's very interesting to see a man who is in charge of 3 major lawsuits against the NCAA. For him to list that as number 1, that made me sit up and go, immediately I thought about you, Mullen. I was like, that's what Mullen's been talking about. That's right there.
And it's right there in part 2 as well. Employment. Athletes are made employees. Or at the very least, they unionize in an effort to collectively bargain with their school or conference.
How's it going to work out, Moan? Let everybody
Conference
know.
employees. This is what all the conferences are going to have to get together and decide equally. And this is where the Big 12 is going to be a benefit to the SEC and the Big 10, because they're going to have to say, hey, we've got to keep this equal to keep the Big 12 within it.
Good point.
So we don't have to pay you nearly as much as we want to, because the Big 12 doesn't make nearly as much as we do.
It could be a moderated effect. And with your G conferences, if they stay in the FBS, they're all part of the same group. I mean, they can use that as we have to allow them to be competitive. You want us to crush the little guy? I mean, that's a compelling argument. So you're right on with that one too.
Yeah.
I just, some of the later ones here, his ideas I think are not quite as good, but those number 1 and number 2 are right on.
Right on. No, I agree with them. They're nails. Revenue sharing. A settlement from the House case produces a revenue sharing model for athletes.
Remember, he's the head lawyer for that case. So
I'm sure he would love that. That would be his ideal, because he would get.
That's all he's thinking about right now is revenue sharing. He's like, so much.
He's
money.
thinking of 30%.
It does make sense, though.
He's thinking of 30%
based on the television contract. Yeah, I mean, but really, that does make sense, guys. Like, you get a cut of the entire media contract as conference employees, players.
I think that plays into the number 2 part. Yeah. Of the employees.
And then finally, Congress, the federal government takes action with legislation that grants legal protection to the NCAA and potentially creates a carve out for college athletes to earn compensation in a more regulated way. This one seems impossible to me that Congress can achieve anything, guys.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. With you.
So there is more beyond that towards the end. I'll finish up with those. And you guys might find more to talk about this in the future. Like I said, this Kessler guy, if he's starting to come out now, I mean, I guarantee he probably reached out to Ross and said, okay, you ready to talk? Because Ross is pretty much the preeminent guy right now when it comes to sports media. Like he just is. So I think we're going to be hearing a lot more from this guy, and anyone he wants to talk to is going to gladly sit down with him. I don't know if we're.
I like this one. Just this quote's from Kessler. Change is
Gotcha.
here. It is not going to stay the same. It's already different. The best thing that everybody should think about is, okay, can we make this change the most positive change for everyone involved? Stop living a vision that doesn't exist. Face the realities here because it's going to happen. The question is, are you going to be part of that change or not be part of that change?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And after that one, what's he? The stop living. They're living in the past, and that's he's trying to get them to come to the settlement table. Is what he's doing. He has now started his push for the settlement, which is fascinating. And it's like, everyone watch where this guy is, because everything he says, all these other powerful, important people are going to be sitting on the edge of their chair on pins and needles saying what's Kessler saying. So we might as well too. If we're trying to be, on the edge of knowing what's going on, we have to look at what he says and remember that everyone else is looking at it too at the exact same time and saying, okay, how do we react to this? But that line at the very bottom, you can see it right now. A deadline looms. The House case goes on trial in January. We've talked about that. This deadline is coming. It's getting closer and closer as we get there. His last line. I don't know if you want to read that one off you. I'm kind of curious to see what you have to say.
I can read it.
Okay.
If we get to December and nothing else has happened, he said, smiling, we are going to win before a jury in December, and we are going to win before a jury in January.
He's confident, guys.
He's got multiple cases. He is coordinating. He's coordinating cases. Like, if you're at these schools and you're seeing this, you're going, how the F did this happen? How did one guy, one firm get in control of all of this? Because now you can coordinate. You can coordinate these arguments. You can work them in. That's a nightmare. That is nightmare fuel right there. You see that? Jury trial? You think any of these schools and these conferences, is that what he's pushing for? That's news to me. If they're talking about actually getting this into being a jury situation, oh, you do not. That's nightmare fuel for these schools. They're like, no. We'll lose that. He's right. I don't know if it actually goes to jury, but they're sitting down in settlement talks probably in a matter of weeks.
Yeah, it's interesting. It almost reminds you of he's a rainmaker. He's trying to get all these cases corralled and settled to get the biggest settlement possible for his law firm.
He's going to retire after that. You kidding me?
No, he won't. He'll find somebody else to sue for even more money.
Can you imagine, like, even if you're taking 1%, these talks have been projected in the billions.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Lots of legal fees that need to be paid back, guys. Lots of legal fees.
Are we going to have a salary cap, guys? Going back to some of the other thoughts that we're talking about it. So if the Big Ten shares a portion of its media rights with the employees, the student employees, is that the name for them? Student employees? Like, that makes sense. Just athletes, employees, pros, whatever they are. But is there going to be a salary cap to add more equality in college football, or is there not?
I think there has to be to make it competitive for all parties involved. It's not going to be fair for the Big 12.
I think you might see at the conference level first, unless there's like some larger government that steps in to do that. Getting conferences to go that far and helping each other out seems a bit of a stretch. But we just talked about how they might use your guys' inability to maybe pay out the same as a benefit. So maybe as like a compromise, maybe they do. Because if they can use your guys' situation to pay out less themselves, yeah, that actually makes a whole lot of sense. So kind of talking myself out and into what you're saying here is that you might see some actually broad agreement between the conferences for something like that. We still got to see something happen with governance with the NCAA. I don't know if maybe the autonomous conferences system as it's set up now is not being agreed upon, and something else has to be kind of created. But like I said, I don't think the G5 type schools are getting left behind. And I don't see them being forced to be and having everything that governs them being voted upon only by the A4 unless they agree to that. The NCAA is not going to just hand over governance because all those schools, if the autonomous conferences rule Division I or the FBS, they have no say in that. So there's going to have to be some type of compromise. But you're right, man. I mean, that's probably some part of this, be some type of broad agreement in terms of price capping.
All right. Illini Ted, if you ask media who is the big sleeping giant, they will tell you it's Nebraska. They have every spring for the last 10 plus years.
For sure.
And that's from an Illini fan. You're getting burned on there, guys.
Yep. Keep chopping. Rutgers ended 7-6 last year.
I was right.
Looking for 9 to 10. I know they won their bowl game. Looking for 9 to 10 wins this year without Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, Iowa, or Oregon on the schedule.
I appreciate the Iowa respect.
I think you could take Iowa. Don't sell yourself short, Rutgers.
I don't know, man. That defense is going to be tough this year. I'm not kidding.
Daniel Gygax. Hayden Fry painted the visitor locker room pink. That
is a Hayden Fry thing, and it's still that way.
Still that way, yeah.
And it's like more like a storage closet. It's not. You're not going in there going, "Oh, this is nice." You're like, "This fucking sucks."
It's not even a good pink. It's not even like a good pink. It's like
it's like
ugly
this god awful.
It's like Barbie pink or something.
No, it's like rose, like pukey rose pink.
And it's faded. And it's faded because it's old. So it's like this ugly faded pink. It's not like a sharp salmon or it's just
like 1980s
ugly.
Housewife pink. That's what it is.
It's like a pastel. It's
like a pastel pink. Yeah.
It's bad. I mean,
it's 1980s 1980s Housewife pink. Hayden Fry was a tough coach. Yes, he was. I will give him that. Hall of Fame football with Jason and the coach. Fellas. Daniel Gygax, how would a cap work without all the conferences agreeing to work together? And I think that's what's going to be the saving grace of the Big 12 is that they're going to be the bottom men on the rung and that everybody has to agree to keep it within the Big 12 sphere, which saves the Big 10 and the SEC a shitload of money.
Yeah. As we were talking through it, I kind of talked myself into it. It makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. And that's something that they could point to and be like, hey, look, see, we're working together. I'll make people feel a bit better about it. That could work in everyone's favor.
DP, have Nebraska fans shown up during this down period or has attendance been poor? Their attendance is always solid.
They're always selling out.
Crazy.
Yeah. Always.
They sell out every game. And it's not a small stadium. It's like an 80,000 person stadium.
Yeah. I think 89 is
90. It is. It's a nice stadium. I mean, I am expecting them to do some renovations here in the future to keep up with the times. But they are about packing it, so I don't know if they really want to get too much smaller. We'll see.
Hey guys, let's go back to that Iowa conversation real quick, guys.
So
that pink locker room.
Well, we've got comments on it, so I'm bringing it. There you go. Pepto pink.
Macula, is that what we're talking about? Is this the pink locker room?
That's it. Yeah, like I said, it's not even a nice locker room. Like you're in there and it's just, I mean, you're like, oh God, are we in college?
That's a good photo of it. The last time I saw it, it was not that pink. It was not that pink.
It was a little more beat up. I think this might be one of the earlier times.
That's a horrible pink. And that carpeting or whatever that is on the floor.
It was meant to just be like kind of mentally deteriorating to a team while they're sitting in there over halftime and before the game. Like University of Iowa psychologists even got into the whole situation.
A suburban housewife who sells Mary Kay decorates her bedroom.
Yeah, that's definitely what that is.
Go Black said it's Pepto pink. You're right.
And did you see like they have like the little fold out iron chairs in there for you too? Like they don't even have pads.
It's like worse than it's like Pepto pink that you like threw up.
It's not the worst visitor locker room in the Big Ten, by the way. The worst
What's
visitor
worse
locker
than
room,
that?
Northwestern.
Really?
Yeah, look up Northwestern visitor locker room. It's like a hallway, and there's shit that's falling on you.
It literally looks like a closet.
Yeah, it's awful. It's one of the reasons they have to redo that stadium.
Oh, so this isn't intentional. It just sucks.
It's somebody designed it.
Well, the old stadium is like about the size and the look of like a good stadium in high school Texas. Like it's just very old timey. Back in the day, I mean, that type of stuff wouldn't have been as big of a deal back in the day, man. I mean,
yeah, but now you got asbestos raining down on players trying to play a game. Scott Schrader, damn, that's crazy. Allow pink on pink crime.
But it's you talk about why people might not like Iowa that are in the Big Ten. Well, that's why.
I love that. What a psychological dagger for the visiting opponent.
It is brilliant.
Hayden Fry, he was not the one to F around, man.
He was an innovator.
But he was not nice. Like, I mean, he was good to his people, but he was brutally competitive.
The Iowa pink reminds me of the old pink toilets from the 70s, back when that was a thing. Yes.
That might have been part of the mentality of it as well.
I bet you they have one of those toilets in this locker room.
Yeah, it looks just like those old toilets.
I bet the toilet's pink.
That pink is amazing. Oh, man.
I mean, when those guys walk in there and it's someone who's there for the first time, he's like, you got to be fucking kidding me. This is not for real. I mean, you hear about it, but you walk into that room and then you're just surrounded by that. Like, what am I in Barbie land here?
Institutional pink.
Yeah, that's
what it is. All right, fellas. Well, we've been at it for about an hour and a half here. I think we're going to wrap it up. Parting thoughts? Well, do you
watch Notre Dame? Notre Dame, Notre Dame, Notre Dame. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but it will happen over the next few years. I think that they're going to make that move. The Notre Dame to Big Ten fit video will be coming out for members only tomorrow. Really interesting. There's going to be some data in there too that you're going to want to see, especially about research dollar trends spending in the Big Ten. And there's been a lot of talk about your Nebraskas and your other schools in the Big Ten, like looking at where their spending levels for research spending versus others, and even Notre Dame. It's kind of fascinating to see. So pay attention, look out for it tomorrow. And that's what I got to say.
Tony Lawson lets us know Iowa's urinals are pink, no lie. So apparently all the toilets are pink in there.
Minnesota folks would definitely know. They come there the most.
Immaculate.
One thing we didn't touch upon, the USC NLRB hearings have concluded today. That is now they're expecting like a month or so before they actually get the decision back on it. And funny thing finally happened. The NLRB case person, coordinator, whoever they are, they said that they think they had a fair hearing than what they got in the Northwestern case. And I've been trying to get people to realize, like, this is the exact same case being tried again. USC's even coming to the Big Ten. So they're now saying that they had a better shot than the Northwestern case. And I've been saying, don't be surprised if when this comes back, they didn't win with USC. And to see this Notre Dame case, to tie this into what you said about Notre Dame, to now see an NLRB complaint filed on Notre Dame kind of feels like they know that, because the USC case was unexplainably paused. They just paused it. They stopped. And then this week, they came back and resumed. And then within like a couple of days, it's done. They could have been done with this so long ago. Why not? Why did they stop if that was all they had left to do? There's just a couple days worth of stuff. So I think there's something up with that. We're going to find out within a month. But I think that Notre Dame case, I think that might be signaling that they're not so sure if that USC case won. So they're trying to keep the pressure up. So we'll see what comes with that.
All right. Well, we will see you next for this Sunday. go ahead and plug it. Big Ten Ted will be joining myself and Immaculate this Sunday on Mowing After Dark.
Right.
We're going to talk a little spring football, a little Big Ten stuff, see if he'll back me up on Rutgers. And we'll get his thoughts on Iowa's pink bathrooms. See what he thinks. Maybe
Wisconsin boys know this too.
see what he thinks about it. But until then, we will just say peace out. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in tonight. Much appreciated, and have a great weekend.
Who are you?